Released in 1994 on every platform known to man, Primal Rage is a 2D fighting game with dinosaurs. What more do you need to know? But where do you start? The first hurdle a curious player will face is deciding which version is best. At the time of the game's release, you'd probably want to go with the Super Nintendo cartridge over the Genesis. And it goes without saying, either option is better than the portable versions. A little later on, it also released on the next batch of consoles, such as the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. And since you don't own a Saturn, Jaguar, or a 3DO, I'd say that gives PlayStation the edge. But why settle for a port when you can have the real thing? Yeah! No, it's a terrible special effect. The closest you'll get at home to replicating right here is this one. Midway Arcade Treasures 2 for 6th generation consoles. I'm not enough of an expert to get into the minutiae of the strengths and weaknesses of the many versions. But from a layman's perspective, this one has the best visuals, and frankly, it plays fine. The plot of Primal Rage is simple but effective. Following a cataclysmic asteroid impact, the continents of the world are reshaped into a badass dinosaur skull, and humanity is reduced to a more primitive state. Old gods who take the form of dinosaurs and other prehistoric monsters are unleashed from their ancient slumbers and battle to the death to win over a populace of potential worshippers. If I was forced to choose between a fire-breathing T-Rex and a voodoo cobra witch as my god, I too would just wait to see how the deathmatch turns out. Best to go with the winning team after all. And of course, whichever monster reigns supreme will take control of Earth. No, not Earth. I'm saying Earth. With a U. 'Cause why not? For me, reviewing this game is a complicated task. To be honest, the only fighting games I've been able to sink any amount of time into are the Super Smash Bros. Titles. And that's probably because they're so non-traditional. Primal Rage is very much in the vein of Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, and its other, more successful peers. I'm thinking it's probably not as good as those games, given its lack of success, but I might not be the right guy to tell you that. What I can say is there's just not much here. You've got 7 prehistoric gods to choose from, 2 of which are resized palette swaps with very samey movesets. And of course, each of them has their own stage. Feature-wise, there's a 2-player competitive mode and a single-player tournament. Primal Rage is an arcade game through and through, and even here in the home version, the game is as bare bones as they come. But hey, it's still fun to experiment with the different characters. They all have unique personalities and fighting styles. Even the clones offer enough variance to justify giving them a try. And in the game's favor, I'd say it's very approachable in terms of pick up and play fun. Your 4 basic moves are all mapped to their own buttons and can easily be turned into leaping or sweeping variants by jumping and crouching. More advanced special moves are also present, but as is tradition in the genre, the only way to pull them off is to remember awkward button combos. Really, this might be the big reason why I can't get into classic fighting games. To me, these inputs are not intuitive at all. My brain isn't wired to remember them, so I end up relying on basic moves or button mashing. And what's worse is, in this case, I'm playing an arcade game, ported to GameCube, which for the purposes of capturing footage, is being mapped to an Xbox controller in an emulator. It's a small miracle that I could pull off even a couple of these moves with any consistency. Thankfully, the game's AI is generally pretty easy, so you can definitely muddle your way through by spamming tail whips or just going nuts with your controller. Since this is an arcade recreation and you can't put quarters in your console, you can retry fights as many times as needed. So just by virtue of messing around, you'll be able to experience most of what this game has to offer. Even with my mundane abilities, I slowly claimed the continents of Earth and arrived at the game's final encounter. The first phase is all about preparation. You're faced with a time limit to devour as many worshippers and pterodactyls as possible. This will provide you with a bonus health bar of varying length to help you tackle the next segment. But be ready for disappointment. Instead of fighting an entirely new end boss character, the developers took the easy way out. What you get instead is a boring gauntlet where you have to battle through each of your opponents one more time. And after that, you're done. Time to pick a new character and try again. Like I said, this is all fine and par for the course given the genre, but it's not really my thing. So you might be asking, why is this guy even bothering to talk about Primal Rage? Well, it all comes down to aesthetics. I love everything about this game. The characters, the world, the sounds, the graphics. Everything except the gameplay. Perhaps you can even relate to my problem. Surely there's a game out there that you really want to like, but you know it's just not for you. Primal Rage's roster of dinosaurs, monsters, and apes are all really cool, and I like the mythological angle given to them. These aren't just prehistoric animals, they're gods, vying for supremacy over the ruins of mankind's empire. How cool is that? And surely, by this point, watching all of this footage, I'm sure you've noticed the graphics. Much like how Mortal Kombat used real actors to create 2D sprites, the developers at Atari used real dinosaurs, or the closest thing they could find. These are stop-motion puppets, most likely inspired by the work of Ray Harryhausen on 1 million years BC, or Willis O'Brien on The Lost World. They look incredible. The texture, the animations, the colors, it's all top-notch. Honestly, this is a pretty easy game to get your hands on, especially if you go with the Midway Arcade Treasures port. So if for no other reason than the visuals, I recommend giving it a try. And hey, if you actually like fighting games, that's a bonus. Still, a good aesthetic goes a long way, and Primal Rage, despite its limited window of relevance, has stayed somewhat prominent along the fringes of the gaming community. It's very memorable and totally rocks that wild 90s style. What's funny is that Primal Rage was a financial success, but more so in terms of merchandising than the game itself, which further supports my stance that it's just not that great to play. Nonetheless, a sequel was greenlit and got pretty far in development before being scrapped. And if you can believe it, the game is fully playable. For anyone who's even a bit tech savvy, you can emulate it on your home computer. As for the game itself, it's certainly a novel experience to finally be able to play it, and everything is remarkably functional given its incomplete state. But, do you notice anything strange here? Where are all the dinosaurs? For most of the game, you're stuck with these Gumby-looking humans. They're avatars of the previous game's gods and can occasionally take their form. Kinda like the transformations in the Bloody Roar series. Now I do realize the actual dinosaurs are still fully playable. You access them by holding up on the character select screen. But why are they hidden like this? And honestly, if you're making a sequel to Primal Rage, investing any development time or resources into human characters is kinda missing the point, isn't it? Why not just build on the existing roster with a bunch of crazy new monster designs? As for the gameplay itself, it's a lot smoother and more responsive, while still maintaining the same general feel. Overall, there's a lot of potential here, despite a misguided change in direction. But there's no sense in trashing an unfinished game. And really, in terms of Primal Rage, or any fighting game for that matter, you should probably take my opinion with a grain of salt. As for the future of Primal Rage, I'd say stay tuned. More than ever, forgotten franchises are getting long overdue reboots and remakes. And Atari in particular seems eager to plunder its history for whatever nuggets it can find. And Primal Rage, despite any minor issues, is absolutely ready for a comeback, even if it's just another port. I guess this is a bit of an odd review, and I'm probably not the right guy to dissect the mechanics of this game. I mostly want to talk about Primal Rage to share my dilemma, being a fan but not a fan at the same time. That, and it felt like a good way to set up my next video. Remember when I said Primal Rage was a success, but not necessarily because of the game itself? Yeah, merchandise. Come back in 2 weeks, and we will take out the toys.